Nobody talks about the time Elvis Presley was a truck driver.
He got a job as a truck driver at Crown Electric for a good salary of $40 a week.
Unknown, working long days and singing along to the radio while dreaming of something bigger. Elvis Presley grew up poor in Tupelo, Mississippi. His family lived in a small house and money was always tight.
Elvis came from a very poor upbringing.
When Elvis was 10, he wanted a bicycle for his birthday, but his parents couldn't afford one. Instead, his mother bought him a guitar because it was cheaper.
Gladys bought her son his first guitar at the Tupelo hardware store for $7.90 for Elvis's 11th birthday.
At first, Elvis was shy, but he started playing every day. He practiced after school and sang quietly to himself.
Presley recalled, "I took the guitar and I watched people and I learned to play a little bit, but I would never sing in public. I was very shy about it."
That guitar became his escape from hard times and helped him believe in a better future. As Elvis got older, music became a part of his everyday life. He listened to gospel music at church, blues on the radio, and country songs at home.
When I got old enough, I started to sing in church. I liked all type of music.
After high school, Elvis worked as a truck driver in Memphis, delivering supplies and equipment. During long drives, he sang along to the radio and practiced his voice. Even while working, he kept dreaming about becoming a singer.
I vocalize every day. I practice if I'm working or not.
In 1953, Elvis walked into Sun Records because he wanted to record a song as a gift for his mother.
I made the first record really as a personal thing for my mother.
When I was working for Sam Phillips, one of the services we offered was a general recording service, $3 one side, $4 two. One day, a very strange-looking young man with sideburns came in and said he wanted to make a record for his mother. I believe he said for his mother's birthday.
He paid $4 and recorded My Happiness, and That's When Your Heartaches Begin. He wasn't trying to be famous, he just wanted his mom to hear his voice on a record. The studio owner, Sam Phillips, noticed that Elvis sounded different from anyone else.
After listening to his voice, seeing his demeanor, his manner, and what I thought was a very different style, I was highly impressed with what I thought he could do as an artist.
In 1954, Sam Phillips asked Elvis to record That's All Right. A local radio station played it, and listeners kept calling in asking, who is that singer? Elvis started getting attention around Memphis, but not everyone believed in him.
Together with Scotty Moore and Bill Black, they woodshedded for hours and days and months in the studio, and finally came up with a record called That's All Right, Mom. When Dewey Phillips played it on WHBQ here in Memphis on his Red Hot and Blue show, that was it. People went berserk.
That's All Right, Mama was a hit in Memphis, Tennessee overnight. When I got on the road to try to convince the people that we hopefully had something a little different, it was a little different story.
Later that year, Elvis performed once at the Grand Old Opry. After the show, the manager, Jimmy Denny, told him, "You ain't going nowhere, son. You ought to go back to driving a truck." Elvis felt crushed. He was embarrassed and discouraged, but he didn't quit. He went back to work, kept practicing, and kept performing anywhere he could. In 1955, Elvis signed a record deal with RCA Records. In 1956, his song Heartbreak Hotel hit #1. That was the turning point. Elvis became famous across the country. His voice, his style, energy changed music forever.
For more than 2 decades, his magic created excitement wherever he went. Elvis was a simple man whose life became complex. He was the king of rock and roll.
He went on to sell over 1 billion records and became known as the king of rock and roll. Elvis once said, "There's a lot of people saying a lot of things, but in the end, you gotta listen to yourself."
A lot of people saying a lot of things, but in the end, you got to listen to yourself.
Believe in your dreams before anyone else does. People will talk. Keep listening to yourself. The truck driver with a dream. Elvis Presley was told to go back to driving a truck. He was a young man with big dreams. He was standing on the most famous stage in country music. He was told he had absolutely no talent. This is a story of how a poor kid from Mississippi built a billion-dollar business empire. It's a story about hard work and massive belief. Most people see the famous singer in the white suit. They do not see the lonely kid practicing in his room. They do not see the teenager working long hours. They do not see the entrepreneur who changed the music industry forever. the guitar that changed everything. Elvis grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi. His family was extremely poor. They lived in a tiny house with only 2 rooms. Money was a constant problem. His father struggled to find steady work. They often had to borrow money just to buy food. When Elvis turned 10 years old, he wanted a bicycle for his birthday. His parents did not have the money for a bike, so his mother bought him a guitar instead. The guitar cost $12.95 at a local hardware store. Now, at first, Elvis didn't even want the guitar. He was a very shy boy. He did not like people looking at him, but he started playing the instrument every single day. He practiced in his small room. He sang quietly to himself so nobody would hear. That small piece of wooden string became his escape from poverty. It gave him hope for a better life. Now, he didn't have teachers. He taught himself by listening to the radio. He played until his fingers hurt. He built a foundation of skill when nobody was watching. Finding the sound. As he grew up, music was everywhere in his environment. He heard gospel songs at the local church. He heard blues music playing on the radio. He heard country songs being played on the street corners. He paid close attention to all of it. He took all these different sounds and mixed them together in his head. He was doing his market research without even knowing it. He was learning what made people tap their feet. He was learning what made people feel emotion. And after high school, Elvis had to get a job. His family still needed money. So he got a job driving a truck for the Crown Electric Company in Memphis, Tennessee. He made $1.25 an hour. He drove around the city delivering supplies, and it was hard physical work. The days were long and exhausting, but he never stopped singing. He sang loudly in his truck. He practiced controlling his voice while he drove. He used his working hours to get better at his craft. He did not let his regular day job stop his massive dream. The $4 investment. In the summer of 1953, Elvis decided to make a bold move. He walked into the Memphis recording studio. This building later became the famous Sun Records. He had exactly $4 in his pocket. He wanted to record 2 songs on a small plastic record. The songs were called My Happiness and That Is When Your Heartache Begins. He told the person at the desk he wanted to make a record as a gift for his mother. But deep down, he also wanted to be heard by professionals. He wanted someone in the music business to notice his talent. The owner of the studio was Sam Phillips. Sam was not there on that specific day. His assistant, Marion Kiesker, was running the record equipment. She recorded Elvis singing. She heard something very special and different in his voice. She wrote down his name on a piece of paper. She made a note that he was a good singer. She kept his name on file. Elvis took his record home and went back to driving his truck. The first taste of success. A full year passed. Elvis kept working his job. Finally, Sam Phillips called Elvis back to the studio. He wanted to see what the young truck driver could do. Sam paired Elvis with 2 local musicians. They played music for hours in the small room. Nothing sounded very good. They were all getting tired. They were just about to pack up and go home. Then, during a short break, Elvis picked up his guitar. He started playing an old blues song called That Is All Right. He played it very fast. He jumped around the room. He added a completely new rhythm to the song. The other 2 musicians joined in with him. Sam Phillips heard the energy and immediately hit the record button. Sam took the fresh record to a local radio station. He asked the DJ to play it on the air. The DJ played the song. Immediately, the radio station phone lines lit up. People kept calling the station. They wanted to know the name of the singer. They demanded the DJ play the song again. The DJ played that single song 14 times in one night. Elvis finally had his first small win in the market. The ultimate rejection. But success is never a straight line up, right? It is full of hard drops. Later in 1954, Elvis got a chance to perform at the Grand Old Opry. The Opry was the absolute biggest and most important country music show in the world. Getting on that stage was a massive opportunity. So Elvis drove to Nashville. He went on the famous stage. He sang his heart out for the audience. The crowd did not like his performance. They thought he was too different. The manager of the Grand Old Opry was a powerful man named Jimmy Denny. After the show, Jimmy Denny walked right up to Elvis. He looked at the young singer. He said, "You ain't going nowhere, son. You ought to go back to driving a truck." The choice to keep going. Elvis was completely crushed by these words. He cried on the long drive back to Memphis. He felt like a total failure. The most important man in the business told him he was worthless. Elvis had a very serious choice to make. He could listen to the manager and quit the business forever, or he could listen to his own heart and keep working. He chose to keep going forward. He went back to his hometown. He kept practicing his guitar. He kept performing at tiny, dirty clubs for very little money. He simply refused to give up on his vision. He knew his value even when the experts did not see it yet. Building the image. Elvis realized he needed to stand out from the crowd. He could not just be a good singer. He had to become a full entertainer. He started shopping at stores that sold very bright and flashy clothes. He styled his hair tall. He dyed his hair completely black because he thought it looked better on camera and on stage. He started moving his body wildly when he sang. People had never seen anything like this before. Some people loved his energy. Some people hated his movements, but absolutely everyone was talking about him. He clearly understood the raw power of human attention. So in any business, attention is the most valuable asset that you can collect. If people do not know you exist, they cannot buy your product. Elvis made sure everyone in the country knew his name. By 1955, his contract was sold to the giant RCA Records company for $35,000. It was the highest price ever paid for a musical artist at that time. Now, RCA had the corporate money and the marketing power to put Elvis on a national stage. He was no longer just a local singer. He was becoming a major corporate brand. Also, if you want to take real action after this video, I made a free worksheet just for you. It covers the top lessons from today, gives you space to write your biggest takeaways, and helps you build a simple action plan. It's 100% free. Just click the link in the description to go grab it. I'll see you there. The power of television. Elvis and his new management team completely changed how the music business operated. They did not just sell vinyl records to teenagers, they sold an entire lifestyle brand. In 1956, Elvis went on national television. Television was still a very new technology. Many old singers did not trust television. Elvis embraced it fully. He performed on the famous Ed Sullivan Show. Over 60 million people watched his performance that night. That massive number represented over 80% of the entire television viewing audience in America. He reached millions of new customers in a single night. He did not have to drive from town to town to find them. He used modern technology to deliver his product directly into their living rooms. The merchandise empire. After conquering television, they started selling merchandise. They treated the Elvis name like a powerful trademark. They put his face and name on absolutely everything that they could manufacture. They sold Elvis shirts. They sold Elvis lipstick for girls. They sold Elvis record players. They sold Elvis hats and lunchboxes. In the year 1956 alone, official Elvis merchandise sales generated over $22 million. This massive success proved that a musical artist could be a diversified business empire. He wasn't just making money from singing, he was building a global brand that created multiple streams of income for him. He was the product, the marketing team, and the CEO all at the same time. The Hollywood strategy. So next, Elvis expanded his brand into the movie business. He knew that movies reached a completely different global audience. Movies also paid very high salaries. So he signed massive contracts to make multiple Hollywood movies every single year. His manager negotiated incredible business deals where Elvis received a huge percentage of the box office profits. Now, many film critics said the movies were not great art. The plots were very simple, but the movies were absolutely great business. They kept his face in movie theaters all over the entire world. They allowed him to sell millions of soundtrack albums. Every single movie was basically a giant 2-hour commercial for his music. He used one industry to feed another industry. Losing the fire. However, success can sometimes make you comfortable. And by the late 1960s, the music market changed dramatically. New rock bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were taking over the radio. Elvis had spent many years trapped in Hollywood making silly movies. He had stopped performing live music for his fans. People started to forget how great he was on a real stage. His record sales started to drop. He was losing his position in the market. He needed to pivot fast. In business, if you do not adapt to your changing market, your business will die. The great pivot. So Elvis realized he had lost control of his own product. He wanted to get back to his roots. He wanted to feel the energy of a live crowd again. He made a very risky business decision. He decided to do a live television special to prove he was still the absolute best in the world. He had to show everyone he was not just a movie actor. The Comeback Special. In 1968, Elvis filmed this television special. It is now called the 1968 Comeback Special. He dressed in a cool black leather suit. He looked dangerous and energetic again. He sat in a small circle with his old bandmates. He played his electric guitar and sang with raw, authentic power. He completely reminded the whole world who he was and why he was famous. The television show was a massive critical and financial hit. It became the highest rated TV show of the entire year. He successfully saved his own brand. He took back his power by returning to the core product that made him successful in the first place. He stopped trying to be what Hollywood wanted. He went back to being Elvis. Inventing the Las Vegas model. After the massive success of the Comeback Special, Elvis changed the live music business model again. He was tired of traveling on buses and airplanes. He stopped touring the country. Instead, he made his fans travel to see him. He signed a massive record-breaking deal to perform exclusively at the International Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. Before Elvis arrived, Las Vegas was mostly a place for older, fading singers. It was considered the place where music careers quietly went to die. Elvis completely changed that perception. He turned that city into a money-making machine for rock music. He performed 2 full shows every single day for weeks at a time. He sold out every single seat for every single show. Over 2.5 million people traveled to Las Vegas just to see him perform. He proved to the entertainment industry that a long residency could be highly profitable. He created a brand new way for artists to make millions of dollars without traveling. Today, giant music stars like Adele and Lady Gaga use this exact same business model. Elvis invented the modern residency. He saw a massive opportunity in a city where others only saw a dead end. The work ethic behind the king. Now, none of this massive success happened by accident. It happened because Elvis had an incredible work ethic. He worked harder than anyone else in the room. He recorded hundreds of songs. He starred in over 30 feature films. He performed thousands of live concerts. He pushed his body and his voice to the absolute limit. He was constantly studying the entertainment market. He watched other performers. He studied lighting and stage design. He involved himself in the production of his records. He was not just a passive singer reading a script. He was the primary architect of his own massive success. He understood that natural talent is never enough. You have to combine talent with a relentless, unstoppable level of hard work. You have to show up every single day and deliver value to your audience. The final lesson. Elvis Presley eventually sold over 1 billion records worldwide. He officially became the best-selling solo artist in the entire history of recorded music. His name is known in every single country on earth. His face is recognized by billions of people. But you must remember where his story started. He started as a poor kid with a cheap guitar. He started as a tire truck driver making barely over $1 an hour. He was told by industry experts that he had no talent. He was told to give up and go back to driving a truck. He achieved global greatness because he flatly refused to listen to the doubters. He trusted his unique vision when nobody else understood it. He put in the hard work in the dark. He continuously adapted his business when the market shifted. He built a brand that easily outlived him. Elvis once said a very powerful quote. He said, "Values are like fingerprints. Nobody's are the same, but you leave them all over everything you do." That is the ultimate lesson of his life. You have to leave your unique fingerprint on the world. You can't just copy somebody else and expect to be a legend. You have to find your own voice. You have to build your own path. You have to believe in your massive dream long before anyone else does. The world will always tell you to go back to driving the truck. The world will always tell you to play it safe. You must block out that noise. Keep pushing forward, keep building your empire brick by brick, and trust your own value. And congratulations, you're one video closer to who you're meant to be. Believe. Now let's learn how Ed Sheeran built his dream with no money. Ed Sheeran had no record deal, no money, and no backup plan. He played on the streets, in tiny pubs, even on the subway, and some nights he had nowhere to sleep but a train station. But he refused to quit. Now, he's one of the biggest artists in the world. Growing up, Ed was bullied for his stutter, his red hair, and his thick glasses. He didn't fit in. Music became his escape. At 16, he dropped out of school, packed his guitar, and moved to London alone. No money, no record deal, no safety net, just a dream. Every night he played tiny pubs, street corners, and open mics, sometimes to only 3 people in the audience. When the gigs paid nothing, he slept on sofas, on trains, even outside Buckingham Palace. Some nights he played his heart out and still went to bed hungry. Record labels ignored him. People told him to quit, but he kept writing, kept performing, kept believing. Then, in 2010, everything changed. He took a one-way ticket to LA, played an open mic, and Jamie Foxx saw his talent, inviting him to record in his studio and sleep at his house. That moment led to his big break. His independent music blew up online. Soon, he signed a record deal, dropped Plus, and the world finally saw what he always believed. He was meant for this. Now, 100 million records sold, Grammy Awards, stadiums packed worldwide. Ed had no money, no support, no excuses. Just belief, hustle, and a guitar. What about you? Are you making excuses or making it happen? A rough start, bullied and different. Ed Sheeran grew up feeling like an outsider. He was a shy, weird kid with thick glasses, bright red hair, and a bad stutter. Classmates picked on him relentlessly for how he talked, how he looked, everything. He once said, "I wore big glasses, had hearing problems, had a stutter, and I had ginger hair." Not exactly a recipe for popularity at school. To escape the bullying, young Ed found solace in music. He started singing in the church choir at just 4 years old and learned guitar by 11. In his early teens, music had become his safe space, a place to express himself when words failed. In fact, music literally helped cure Ed's stutter. At age 9, he memorized Eminem's fast rap album, the Marshall Mathers LP, front to back, and rapping along helped him stop stuttering. The very things that made him different, his voice, his creativity, his quirks, would one day become his superpowers. But back then, Ed just knew that music was his passion. He wrote songs in high school and performed wherever he could. At 11, he nervously played his first real gig, singing Eric Clapton's Layla at a youth show. That little taste of performing lit a fire inside him. He didn't fit in at school, but on stage, with a guitar, Ed felt at home. He dreamed of making it big as a musician, even when almost no one else believed in him. No plan B. All in on a dream. At 16, Ed made a bold decision that shaped his future. He dropped out of school and moved to London alone to pursue music full time. No college, no day job, just gig after gig in the big city. This is a huge leap of faith for him. He had no record deal, no connections, no safety net to catch him if he fell. But that was exactly how Ed wanted it. He never had a plan B. In his mind, if you have a backup plan, you'll use it when things get tough. So he didn't give himself that option. There's no plan B. This has to work, was his mindset. By removing the safety net, Ed forced himself to give 100% to plan A, making it in music. It was a do-or-die gamble on himself. Now, London was intimidating for a teenager from a small town. Ed arrived with basically nothing, just his guitar, a few songs, and a head full of dreams. He crashed on couches of any friends or acquaintances who'd have him, and when he ran out of couches, he got creative. He knew which late-night subway lines he could ride to stay warm until morning. And he discovered an archway near Buckingham Palace with a warm air vent where he could curl up for a night. He later admitted he was technically homeless for about 2.5 years, from 2008 through 2010. But Ed tried not to see it that way. He was just home less than I'd like to be, as he wrote in one song. He kept reminding himself that it was all temporary, a part of the journey. Now, during this period, Ed had to grow up fast. By day, he would scribble lyrics in his notebook or record rough demos, and by night, he'd haul his little acoustic guitar to any pub, club, or street corner that would let him play. He often performed multiple gigs a day, hustling across London with his guitar on his back. The audiences were usually pretty tiny, sometimes just a handful of indifferent drinkers in a pub or a few passers-by on the street. Once, Ed played an open mic where literally only one person was in the crowd, but he played his heart out for that one person as if it was a packed arena. And every single day was an opportunity to get better. Rejection, he faced it constantly. Most record labels and industry people completely ignored him in those early days. Now, many artists would have gotten discouraged, but Ed used that as motivation to improve. He set crazy work goals for himself. So, for example, in 2009, he played over 300 live shows. Almost every day of the year, he did a gig. He read that singer James Morrison got a record deal after doing 200 shows in a year. So Ed thought, I'll do 300. No was not an acceptable answer. He was determined to outwork everyone. Practice makes progress. And Ed was essentially living a 10,000-hour rule, performing nonstop to hone his craft. My songs are terrible, but I got it out of me. The more you write, the better they'll get, Ed has said, comparing songwriting to letting dirty water flow from a faucet until it runs clear. Every rough gig and every bad song he wrote was bringing him closer to the hit songs that were inside of him. Playing for peanuts, gigs, grit, and growth. So Ed's life in his late teens was anything but glamorous. He'd lug his gear to open mics where he might get paid in beer or not paid at all. He slept on floors and sofas of kind strangers or fellow musicians when he could. But when he couldn't, it was the train or the outdoors. He went without regular meals or showers. I didn't have the best personal hygiene at that point, he admitted, because it was basically play, sweat, crash, and repeat each day. Yet through all this, Ed never saw himself as a failure. He truly believed he was paying his dues and that his big break would come if he just kept going. And importantly, Ed kept writing new music constantly. In between gigs, he recorded homemade EPs and sold them independently. He wasn't waiting for a record label to hand him an opportunity. He was creating his own. And in 2010, he released an EP called Loose Change, which featured a song, The A-Team, that he wrote after performing at a homeless shelter. He had been struck by the struggles of a young woman that he met there. Ed would later say that many of his first performances were at homeless shelters, and those experiences inspired some of his most heartfelt songs. Even as he was living through his own hardships, Ed was turning pain into art. Storytelling and empathy became part of his signature songwriting, qualities that would set him apart from the pack. Slowly but surely, Ed Sheeran was improving. His vocals got stronger, his guitar skills sharper, and his stage presence a little more confident. He was also developing a unique style, using a loop pedal to layer his voice and guitar live, effectively becoming a one-man band. So crowds of 5 turned into 10, then 50. He built a tiny fan base, listener by listener. These few fans were fiercely supportive, buying his self-made CDs and spreading the word about this red-haired kid who could sing and rap and hold an audience spellbound with just an acoustic guitar. Ed's hustle was beginning to pay off in little ways, but the big breakthrough still felt elusive and far away. By the end of 2010, after years of grinding, he was still an unsigned artist living on scraps. Most people, they would have given up. Ed almost did, but he didn't. The turning point, one shot in LA. So in early 2010, frustrated with his stagnation in England, Ed took a huge risk. He spent basically the last of his savings on a one-way ticket to Los Angeles. It sounds crazy. He had no contacts in LA, no shows booked, nothing. But Ed had heard that open mic nights in LA could lead to big opportunities. So he went entirely alone, sleeping on couches in LA just like he had in London. Night after night, he lugged his trusty guitar to any club or cafe that held an open mic, signing up to perform among dozens of other hopefuls. He was just another unknown ginger-haired kid strumming for a distracted crowd. Until one fateful night. That night, Ed played at a popular open mic event in the city. Little did he know, Hollywood actor and music lover Jamie Foxx was in the audience. Jamie Foxx had a keen eye and ear for talent, and Ed's raw musical fire caught his attention immediately. He was this pale British kid, pouring his soul into original songs, rapping and singing with incredible skill. After Ed's set, Jamie Foxx approached him. Imagine Ed's shock. Foxx invited Ed to his radio show, The Foxhole, and had him perform live on air, which introduced Ed to a whole new audience. Even more amazingly, Jamie Foxx was so impressed that he offered Ed the use of his personal recording studio to cut some tracks and let Ed crash at his house during that time. For the first time, someone with industry clout was saying, "You've got this. Let me help you." Ed's long night of struggle was finally seeing a dawn. Ed returned to London with renewed confidence and a small but crucial foothold in the industry. In January 2011, he independently released one more EP, Number 5 Collaborations Project, featuring guest spots from underground rappers that he admired. To everyone's surprise, that EP blew up online. It reached number 2 on the iTunes chart with no label backing at all, selling thousands of copies in its first week. The music industry took notice, big notice. Ed had built a following on his own, and now the labels were calling him. And in a poetic twist, after years of rejection, Ed Sheeran suddenly had a bidding war on his hands. He signed a record deal with Atlantic Records in 2011. The scrappy kid who had been ignored by every label finally had the machine behind him to amplify what he'd been doing all along. Ed was ready for the world, and now the world was ready for Ed. Breakout success, the world listens. Ed wasted no time. In September 2011, at age 20, he released his debut studio album, Plus, under a major label. It was an album full of songs reflecting his journey, heartfelt ballads, up-tempo tracks blending pop, folk, and hip-hop influences. The lead single, The A-Team, a gentle song about a homeless girl's struggle, showcased Ed's songwriting and soulful voice. It struck a chord globally. The A-Team became a top 10 hit in many countries and earned Ed his first Grammy nomination for Song of the Year. Not not bad for a song he wrote while couch surfing. The Plus album itself shot to number 1 in the UK and broke into the top 5 in the US, eventually selling millions of copies. Songs like Lego House and Gimme Love turned casual listeners into diehard fans. After so many years of playing for tiny crowds, Ed suddenly found thousands of people singing along to his lyrics. He had gone from sleeping outside Buckingham Palace to performing for the Queen of England, literally. In 2012, Ed was invited to perform at the Queen's Diamonds Jubilee concert. And at the 2013 Grammy Awards, Elton John, one of Ed's early heroes, joined him on stage to duet the A-Team in front of a worldwide audience. Try to picture that moment from Ed's eyes. Just 2 years prior, he was unknown and unsigned, and now he's trading lines with Sir Elton John at the Grammys. It was a powerful validation that all those lonely nights and all those gritty days, they'd been worth it. But Ed was just getting started. Instead of resting after his first taste of success, he worked even harder. In 2012 to 2013, he toured constantly, including getting coveted spots as the opening act for Taylor Swift's arena tour. Night after night, Ed walked on stage with just his guitar in front of massive crowds who mostly didn't know him, and by the end of his set, he had won them over completely. He built his audience the same way he did in pubs, only now on a bigger scale. In 2014, Ed released his second album, Multiply, which exploded even bigger. It featured Thinking Out Loud, the love ballad that earned him 2 Grammy Awards and became a wedding playlist staple worldwide. By the mid-2010s, Ed Sheeran was a bona fide superstar, selling out arenas and stadiums everywhere that he went. Ed's third album, Divide, in 2017, broke streaming records and led to the highest grossing concert tour of all time. Think about that. The kid who played 300 small gigs in a year ended up staging a single tour that sold over 8 million tickets and earned more money than any tour in history. He was selling out London's Wembley Stadium for 3 nights in a row, the very same city where he once slept on the Circle Line train because he had nowhere else to go. Ed had transformed every setback into a stepping stone forward. And as he puts it, I have come out the other end and blossomed. Lessons from Ed's journey: grit, heart, and belief. So Ed Sheeran's rise from struggling busker to global icon is more than just a music success. It's a lesson that we can all learn from. He wasn't handed anything on a silver platter. He wasn't an overnight sensation. He was an over a decade sensation. His story proves that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And research actually shows that what we accomplish depends more on our passion and perseverance than about our innate talent for that thing. Passion and perseverance. Ed had both in abundance. He poured thousands of hours into writing songs, performing nonstop to empty rooms, and improving his craft. And every time life said no, Ed's answer was, try me tomorrow. So what kept him going? First, love of the craft, right? Ed genuinely loves making music, and that sustained him more than fame or money ever could. Second, it was his belief. Like, he had a belief that he was meant to do this. Even when others doubted him, and many people did, Ed believed in his own vision. He turned insults and rejections into motivation. Remember how he was bullied as a kid? He took that pain and vowed to succeed in his own way. He once advised, embrace your quirks. The moment you stop trying to fit in, things will fit around you. So being yourself is your greatest strength. Ed's weirdness became his uniqueness. The very traits that bullies mocked him for, his voice, his appearance, his emotional openness, became what millions of fans now adore about him. Ed's journey also shows just the power of being resilient. He faced homelessness and hunger and loneliness and industry rejection for years. Any one of those could make people give up. But Ed kept writing another song, kept booking another gig, kept knocking on the next door. Psychologists have a word for this kind of perseverance: grit. And Ed's grit was off the charts. He didn't wait for opportunities, he created them, whether by playing 300 shows in a year or flying to LA on a whim to play open mics. He trusted the process. And most importantly, Ed never made excuses for why he couldn't succeed. He could have blamed the bullies or his lack of money or the record labels that all turned him down. Instead, he focused on what he could control: writing better songs, performing better on stage, and working harder than anyone else. No money? He played on street corners. No stage? He built his own audience online. No support? He leaned on his own drive. Ed once said in an interview that having a plan B can hold you back because if you have an escape route, you'll take it when things get tough. So he made music his only plan. It was a risky strategy, but that focus helped turn his dream into reality. And look at him now. Ed Sheeran's success isn't just measured in album sales or awards. It's in the millions of lives that he's touched with his music and his story. So he's proof that you can start with nothing but a dream and end up living that dream as long as you're willing to work for it and believe in it. His journey from sleeping in subway stations to performing on the world's biggest stages inspires entrepreneurs, artists, or really anyone with a big goal. So the takeaway, if you want something badly enough, put in the work and never quit. As Ed's story shows, perseverance and passion are a winning combination. Make it happen. Your turn. Ed Sheeran had no money, no privilege, no secret shortcut to success. What he had was his hustle, his heart, and his belief. He made his own opportunities through just sheer effort and refused to let his circumstances define him. So now what about you? Think of your own dreams while you consider Ed's journey. Are you making excuses or are you making it happen? And the next time you're feeling discouraged or thinking about giving up, remember Ed Sheeran, busking for coins in the cold, sleeping on a train, hearing no 100 times, and remember how he kept going. That persistence built the foundation of an empire, and your persistence can do the same for your dream. Now let's learn how Jim Carrey went from a homeless to Hollywood icon. What would you do if you're homeless at 12, scrubbing toilets at 15, and rejected by everyone? Jim Carrey lived it, but he never stopped believing. Jim grew up in Canada in a hardworking family, but when his dad lost his job, everything fell apart. They lost their home and were forced to live in a van. At 15, Jim dropped out of school to help. He worked as a janitor, scrubbing toilets, mopping floors, anything to keep his family afloat. But while he was cleaning, he was dreaming. He knew he was meant for comedy. He practiced jokes in the mirror, did impressions, and finally got on stage. But his first stand-up gig, a disaster. No one laughed. He bombed. Hollywood rejected him. They said he was too weird, too over the top, too much. But Jim refused to quit. He kept grinding, kept pushing, and finally got his break on In Living Color. Then came Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, and overnight he became the biggest comedy star in the world. And here's the craziest part. Before making it, Jim wrote himself a $10 million check for acting services rendered and dated it 1995. In 1995, he got paid exactly $10 million for Dumb and Dumber. Jim Carrey was homeless, broke, and laughed off stage, but he never stopped believing. So what about you? Early life, laughter, and struggle. Jim Carrey was born in 1962 in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada, into a humble, hardworking family. Even as a child, Jim loved making people laugh. At age 8, he would practice making funny faces in the mirror, and by 10, he was so confident in his impersonations that he mailed a letter to Carol Burnett, hoping to be on her comedy show. Comedy was his passion from the start, but Jim's childhood wasn't all smiles and jokes. His family hit serious hardships in his early teens. When Jim was around 12 to 14 years old, his father, Percy, lost his job as an accountant. The sudden blow plunged the family into financial crisis. They even became homeless for a while, living out of a Volkswagen van because they couldn't afford a home. The van was so cramped that Jim and his brother had to sleep in a tent outside. To keep the family afloat, everyone had to pitch in. Jim took on a job as a janitor alongside his dad, cleaning floors and toilets at a factory after school. By the time he was 15, money was so tight that Jim quit school to work full-time and help his family make ends meet. He later said that if show business hadn't worked out, he might have ended up working at a steel mill in Ontario. That's how limited his options seemed back then. It was a tough, uncertain life for a teenager, mopping floors by night and dreaming of comedy stardom by day. Despite the overwhelming challenges, Jim never let go of his love for comedy. In whatever free time he could scrape together, he honed his act. He would stand in front of a mirror practicing goofy expressions and voice impressions, determined to turn his natural silliness into a ticket out of his hardship. His father, despite his own struggles, believed in Jim's talent and did what he could to support his son's dream. Percy Carrey would even drive Jim to downtown Toronto to perform at comedy clubs, giving his son a shot on stage when Jim was just a teenager. The family situation was pretty dire, but those small moments on stage provided a spark of hope for young Jim. He knew making people laugh was what he was meant to do. All he needed was a chance and the courage to keep trying even when things went wrong. Chasing the comedy dream. Jim Carrey's first attempt at stand-up comedy didn't exactly go as planned. In 1977, 15-year-old Jim got up on stage at a Toronto comedy club for the very first time and bombed spectacularly. He had crafted an act full of standard celebrity impressions, the kind he had practiced at home, but the edgy club audience wasn't impressed. His debut was met with silence and awkward coughs rather than laughter. The experience devastated him. My impersonations bombed, which gave me doubts about this career path, Jim later recalled. For a moment, the teen who had so boldly dreamed of comedy stardom was shaken to his core. Was he really cut out for this? And for a while after the first show, Jim stepped back to regroup. He focused on polishing his material and waited for his family's situation to improve a bit. Eventually, things stabilized. His father found a modest job and the Carreys moved out of the van and into a house. With a roof over their head again, Jim was able to return to the stage. In 1979, at age 17, he mounted a comeback in the Toronto comedy scene. This time, he had a sharper act and a fearless attitude, and it paid off. He started to get some laughs, and soon Jim booked his first paid gig, a 20-minute spot at a local club for a small $20 fee. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Audiences were beginning to see the spark in the tall, rubber-faced kid from Ontario. Jim's confidence grew with each performance, and so did his reputation. By the early 1980s, he was becoming a well-known young comic in Canada, earning opening slots from more established comedians. One of those established stars took notice in a big way. Legendary comic Rodney Dangerfield saw Jim's act and was impressed by the lanky youngster's manic energy and impressions. In 1981, Dangerfield invited Jim Carrey to tour with him as an opening act. Imagine being 19 years old and hitting the road with one of the most famous comedians in the country. It was an incredible opportunity. Jim eagerly joined the tour, gaining exposure to American audiences for the first time. With Dangerfield's boost, he even got a foot in the door in Hollywood. He moved to Los Angeles in 1983 to try to break into the US show business. However, Hollywood wasn't ready to roll out the red carpet just yet. Jim faced rejection after rejection in those early LA years. He auditioned for NBC's Saturday Night Live, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and was turned down each time. One of those failed auditions was particularly bitter. Jim never even got to perform for Saturday Night Live's producer Lorne Michaels because some staff writers decided in advance that Michaels wouldn't like Carrey's wild style. He landed a starring role in a low-budget comedy film called Once Bitten in 1985 and a short-lived NBC sitcom The Duck Factory in 1984. But true breakout success still eluded him. Casting agents and executives didn't know what to make of Jim Carrey. Some thought his rubber-faced, over-the-top slapstick was just too weird for movies or TV. At times, Jim must have felt like he was too much for Hollywood to handle. The big opportunities that he dreamed of were just out of reach, and the string of rejections could have easily broken his spirit. Yet through all of these setbacks, Jim refused to quit. He kept grinding, kept pushing his act, and kept showing up at comedy clubs night after night to refine his skills. He was a fixture at LA's Comedy Store and the improv circuit, determined to make his mark. Each no he heard only gave him more incentive to try harder. In his mind, he hadn't come this far, from cleaning factories in Ontario to almost getting on national TV, just to give up. Jim believed it was only a matter of time before his big break would come. And he was right. In the late 1980s, his persistence finally paid off in a big way, opening the door to the opportunity that would change his life. Breakthrough on In Living Color. Jim Carrey's first major breakthrough arrived on a TV sketch comedy series, but not the one he originally envisioned. Instead of Saturday Night Live, it was Fox's In Living Color that would catapult Jim to fame. In 1990, Carrey was cast as a regular on this edgy sketch show created by Keenan Ivory Wayans. He was the lone white comedian in a predominantly black cast, and his fearless, zany characters fit right into the show's bold style. Week after week, audiences laughed at Jim's scene-stealing sketches like the accident-prone Fire Marshal Bill with his twisted rubbery face, or the outrageously feminine bodybuilder Vera DeMilo. Finally, after years of struggling, Jim Carrey had found a platform that let his oddball talent shine. He spent 5 seasons on In Living Color from 1990 to 1994, becoming one of the show's breakout stars. Hollywood, it turned out, was ready for Jim Carrey after all. They just needed to see him in the right setting. Thanks to In Living Color, Carrey's name was starting to get noticed, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. In 1994, Jim leapt from TV fame to global superstardom in the blink of an eye. It all happened in one unbelievable year. In early 1994, he headlined a quirky detective comedy called Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. The film was low budget and the studio didn't have high expectations, but Jim's hilarious performance as the wacky pet detective caught lightning in a bottle. Ace Ventura became a surprise hit, and Jim's catchphrases, "alrighty then," were suddenly everywhere. But he was just getting started. That summer, Jim co-starred in The Mask, a comic book fantasy where his character transforms into a manic, green-faced trickster. It was another box office smash, cementing Carrey's reputation for unmatched cartoonish energy. Then, as if 2 hit movies weren't enough, December 1994 saw the release of Dumb and Dumber, a buddy comedy pairing Carrey with Jeff Daniels. The film was yet another blockbuster, and Jim's portrayal of the sweet but dim-witted Lloyd Christmas had audiences laughing worldwide. 3 major movies in 1 year, each a box office success, turned Jim Carrey into the biggest comedy star on the planet. Virtually overnight, he went from a guy who couldn't get on Saturday Night Live to becoming a household name. Hollywood's attitude towards Jim Carrey flipped almost comically. The same too over-the-top comedian they had been hesitant to cast was now their most bankable funny man. In fact, after Ace Ventura and The Mask raked in cash, studios were desperate to secure Carrey's talents. In 1995, he negotiated a then unprecedented deal. Jim Carrey became the first comic actor to ever earn a $20 million salary for a single film with the dark comedy The Cable Guy. He had ascended to the very top of Hollywood's A-list in record time. But amongst all this whirlwind of success, something truly magical, almost unbelievable, was happening in Jim's life, something he had dreamed about years before. It's a story so crazy you'd think it was a Hollywood script, and it involved a simple piece of paper Jim kept in his wallet. The $10 million check, dreams into reality. One of the most legendary stories about Jim Carrey is a testament to the power of visualization and self-belief. Back in the 1980s, when Jim was still a struggling unknown in Los Angeles, he did something audacious. He wrote himself a check for $10 million. In 1985, a broken, hopeful Jim Carrey made out a personal check payable to himself for acting services rendered, post dated exactly 10 years into the future. The memo line simply read, "For acting, payment for work he vowed to someday accomplish." He tucked that check in his wallet and carried it with him everywhere. At the time, $10 million might as well have been $1 billion to Jim. He was barely scraping by. But that check was his symbolic promise to himself that one day, somehow, he would be worth that much as an actor. It was a bold act of faith. Now, for years, the check just stayed in Jim's wallet, growing tattered as the date drew nearer. And then, incredibly, reality caught up with Jim's imagination. Just before Thanksgiving 1995, exactly as Jim had envisioned, he got news of a career-making payday. He learned that he was going to earn $10 million for starring in Dumb and Dumber. The dream written on that check had come true almost to the letter. Jim had gone from sleeping in a tent and scrubbing toilets to pulling down 8-figure paychecks doing what he loved. It was a stunning example of what unwavering belief and determination can achieve. Almost like the universe decided to wink at him and say, "You believed, and you did it." Jim never forgot the significance of that moment, especially the role his family played in his journey. When his father, Percy, passed away in 1994, Jim placed the now weathered $10 million check in his father's casket. It was a way of honoring the man who had always believed in him and shared his dream. "I put that check in the casket with my father because it was our dream together," Jim said. The story of the $10 million check has since become a Hollywood legend. It's a powerful reminder to dream big and believe in yourself even when circumstances look impossible. Jim Carrey's life is proof that sometimes the wildest dreams really do come true. Beyond laughter, reinvention, and reflection. By the late 1990s, Jim Carrey was at the absolute peak of comedic fame, but he wasn't content to stay in one box. He had conquered comedy. Now he wanted to prove he could truly act. So Jim took a sharp turn and started pursuing more serious dramatic roles. And once again, he found success against the odds. In 1998, he stunned critics and audiences with The Truman Show, playing a sincere insurance salesman who discovers his entire life is a scripted TV show. Carrey's performance was heartfelt and restrained, and it earned him a Golden Globe Award for Best Actor. The very next year, he transformed himself to play Andy Kaufman in Man on the Moon in 1999, another role that earned him critical acclaim and a Golden Globe. Suddenly, Jim Carrey wasn't just a goofy comedian, he was a respected actor capable of depth and nuance. He continued to mix it up in the 2000s, starring in films ranging from broad comedies from Bruce Almighty, Yes Man, to artful dramas like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in 2004, for which he received BAFTA and Golden Globe nominations. Time and again, Jim showed that he could defy expectations, reinventing himself and silencing the naysayers who once doubted his range. Yet, Even as his career soared, Jim faced personal trials behind the scenes. The early fame came at a cost to his personal life. He went through 2 short-lived marriages in the 1990s and a series of very high-profile relationships that didn't work out. More profoundly, Jim battled periods of intense depression for many years. He's spoken openly about the fact that making millions of people laugh couldn't shield him from struggles with mental health and identity. After his explosive rise up, Jim had to grapple with the question, who am I, really, when I'm not Jim Carrey, the comedy star? In a candid moment, he admitted that Jim Carrey had become a character he was playing, a persona he felt people expected, which left him feeling empty. The realization pushed him to seek a deeper sense of self beyond the spotlight. Tragedy also struck Jim's life in a deeply personal way. His mother, who had been ill, passed away in 1991, just as Jim's career was taking off, and his father, his biggest supporter, died in 1994, right before Dumb and Dumber made Jim a $10 million man. Losing both parents so early was a heavy blow for Jim. In the years that followed, he also endured a very public tragedy when a former girlfriend died by suicide in 2015, leading to painful controversy and lawsuits, which were eventually dismissed. Through these hardships, Carrey gradually turned to spirituality and art as a way to heal and find meaning. He developed a passion for painting and sculpting and spending long hours in his art studio creating vivid, expressive works that surprised those who knew only his on-screen persona. In interviews and appearances, Jim's public demeanor began to change as well. He often spoke about deeper philosophical concepts, the illusion of fame, and the importance of the present moment. Some people found his behavior strange, but Jim explained that he was simply no longer interested in playing the Hollywood game or being who others expected him to be. After decades in the limelight, he sought authenticity and inner peace above all. In fact, one of Jim Carrey's most powerful public messages came during a 2014 commencement speech he gave to graduating students. He told a story about his father's influence that summed up everything he had learned from his own journey. Jim's father had played it safe. He'd abandoned his dream of becoming a comedian and took a steady job as an accountant to support the family. But that safe path ended abruptly when Percy was let go from his job, leading to the hardships that the Carreys endured afterwards. From this, Jim learned a lesson he never forgot, as he told the students, I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which is that you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you do want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. In other words, life has no guarantees, so it's better to risk failure at something that truly matters to you. Hearing those words, it's easy to see how Jim's own life exemplifies that philosophy. He risked everything to chase his comedic dream, and though the road was rough, in the end, he achieved more than he ever imagined. Legacy of an unstoppable believer. Jim Carrey's journey from a homeless teen to Hollywood megastar is more than just a rags to riches tale. It shows resilience and authenticity and the power of belief. At every low point in his life, from living in a tent to bombing on stage, Jim found a way to keep his dream alive. He had an almost stubborn faith in his own destiny, scribbling down his wild ambitions on paper like that $10 million check and carrying them close to his heart. When others told him he was too strange, too over the top, or just too much, he didn't tone himself down to fit in. He turned himself up, refining his craft until the world caught up with his vision. And once the world did catch up, Jim still wasn't afraid to change and grow beyond the box he put himself in. He's given us countless laughs with his elastic face and physical comedy, but he's also moved us with performances of real emotional depth. Through successes and failures, he remained at his core that determined kid who just knew he was meant to make people laugh. Today, Jim Carrey has stepped back from making movies at the breakneck pace of his 1990s heyday. After decades of entertaining us, he's hinted at the possible retirement from acting and has become selective about new roles. He focuses much of his time on painting and writing and speaking about the insights he's gained in life. But his impact on pop culture and comedy is already immortal. A whole generation grew up idolizing his characters, from Ace Ventura's talking butt jokes to the mass wild dance numbers, and many of today's comedians cite Jim as a major inspiration. His commitment to his characters and his improvisational genius redefined big screen comedy in the 1990s. And beyond the laughs, Jim Carrey, the man, has inspired millions with his personal story of perseverance. So, what can we take away from Jim Carrey's incredible journey? First, never underestimate the power of belief and hard work. Jim literally envisioned his success years before it happened, but he didn't stop at wishful thinking. He put in the work day after day, whether anyone was watching or not. Second, embrace what makes you unique, the very traits that people mocked or rejected in Jim. His wild energy, his expressive style became the foundation of his superstar success. He stayed true to himself and it paid off. And finally, remember that fame and fortune aren't the ultimate keys to happiness. Jim's later years taught him, and by extension teach all of us, that personal fulfillment comes from being true to yourself and doing what you love, not from chasing others' approval. As he wisely said, you can fail at doing what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on what brings you joy. Jim Carrey was once a 12-year-old living in a van, a 15-year-old janitor scrubbing toilets, and a young comic who heard more no's than yeses. But he never stopped believing in his dream. Instead of giving up, he used every setback to push harder. That belief carried him through the darkest times and ultimately into the brightest spotlight. If Jim's story tells us anything, it's that no dream is too big, not when you're willing to work for it and believe in it with all your heart. So ask yourself, what dreams do you have, and are you willing to take a chance on them? Jim Carrey did, and he not only changed his own life, he brought laughter and inspiration to the whole world. And that might be the greatest success of all. So whatever your passion is, keep going and keep believing. Jim Carrey's incredible journey is living proof that sometimes life can go beyond your wildest dreams. After all, as Jim would say with that famous grin, alrighty then, go make it happen. If you want to hear the Walt Disney story you've never heard before, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there. Walt Disney was fired for lacking creativity, lost his first company to bankruptcy, and got rejected 300 times trying to fund Disneyland. But he refused to quit.